Hi everyone, Christina here. Welcome to another card video at my YouTube channel and blog. Today I'm going to be creating 3 different cards using 3 stencils, one from Dylusions, one from Hero Arts, and one from Winnie and Walter. I'm going to be doing some ink blending techniques with these. I've started out by protecting my work surface with a Ranger craft sheet and then cut down some pieces of Desert Storm cardstock. I'm going to be using 3 different color palettes. These are the colors that I'm going to be using on them. These are the ones that I chose in the end. You will see some different colors on screen as I kind of swap them out and change colors as I go. But for the most part, all of those colors stayed the same. I wanted a pink to purple scheme, a kind of a blue scheme, and then a yellow to green scheme. So I'm starting out with the color mustard seed. Had to think about that for a minute. And I'm blending that down from the top of this cardstock here. This is a craft color cardstock from Basil called Desert Storm. And I wasn't sure how these distress inks would blend on top of it, just because it's not a regular white piece of paper. So I had to sort of improvise and kind of guess how these colors would look as I blended them on. And I'm actually really rather pleased with how they turned out. After I blended on those colors, I put my stencil down and then used the darkest color to blend on just a little bit more color. And it doesn't look like it's going to show much, but then you lift off the stencil and it actually shows quite a bit. On the blue color scheme, I started with Tumbled Glass, but it didn't really show too much, so I very quickly moved on to Salty Ocean. I think Tumbled Glass was just a bit too light for it to show on top of this colored cardstock. I then used some Chipped Sapphire, and then this time I taped down my piece and the stencil at an angle. I realized that because I'm right-handed, I really prefer to blend in things at an angle, so that's why I changed it to that direction. Cleaned off that craft sheet and then moved on to the pink to purple color scheme. The first color I used is Picked Raspberry, and then I moved on to Wilted Violet. And I was really particularly loving how the Picked Raspberry and the Wilted Violet looked on top of this craft cardstock. I think I'm going to have to revisit those 2 colors in a future project because I really loved how those worked out. Then I'm using Seedless Preserves. I didn't blend any Seedless Preserves on before I put the stencil down, and just mostly because I wasn't sure if Seedless Preserves would show up too much on top of the Wilted Violet, but it really did, and I loved the color combination. It's so pretty, and I think it's kind of elegant with that stencil that I used. I'm going to use the All Year Long stamp set from Concord and Ninth. This has some really great greetings and sentiments in it, and then also every month of the year. They have a planner set, or not a planner set, but you could use these in a planner, but they have a calendar set where it's the months and you can stamp the month name and kind of customize your own desktop calendar. But I'm going to be using the greetings from that stamp set to create 3 birthday cards that are going to say, I hear the most amazing people are born in February. I actually know a lot of people that have February birthdays, so these cards will definitely be mailed out fairly quickly since February is just in a couple days. So I stamped the word February in Versamark ink. I'm using a mini Misty stamping tool to help me stamp all these words from the stamp set. Then I sprinkled on some white embossing powder from Hero Arts and then heat set that with a heat tool until it was smooth and melted. I proceeded to do this 2 more times on the other 2 pieces of cardstock, and then I'll move on to the actual greeting. I did want to mention that this cardstock is cut to 3 3/4 inches wide by 5 inches tall and wanted it to be just slightly smaller than a standard size card, so that is where those measurements came from. So I have a scrap of black cardstock here and I'm going to use it up. It's just a tiny little piece, but I only need a tiny bit for this sentiment here. I'm lining up the 2 halves of the greeting and I'm making sure they're nice and straight. And then I'm going to go ahead and swing the door of the Misty down to pick up those stamps. And this is going to make it so that I can stamp, emboss, and then cut off those words and then put that black cardstock right back in my Misty tool and stamp it 2 more times. I'll go ahead and do that for both times to finish up the set of 3. So I'll peel off that cardstock, sprinkle on some white embossing powder, and then use a heat tool to heat set this until it's smooth and melted. For all of the embossing today, I did prep the cardstock first with an anti-static powder tool. So if you saw me using like a little tool to put some powder down, that's what that was. So I've got my 3 strips of words, and I'm going to cut those apart with some scissors. And after I have all of these cut apart, I'm going to go ahead and prep the foam tape that I'm going to be using to adhere them down onto the card front. I'm just taking a strip of foam tape and I'm kind of going to cut it into thirds, so they're very narrow strips of foam tape. And I won't be using all of it on this card, but I can definitely set it aside and use it for future cards as well. So I'm placing the two lines of words right above the word February. And I'm leaving a little bit of a gap in between the 2 lines just so a little bit of that color shows through from underneath. I'll go ahead and adhere those on all 3, and then I've got those pieces ready. I'm going to prep my card bases for these, so I've cut some Neenah Solar White cardstock in the 110-pound version, and I've scored those at 5.5 to create top folding cards. And then put some foam adhesive on the back of each of these pieces, and then press them down onto the card fronts. So these cards are actually fairly simple. That's why I thought it would be fun to create 3 of them and just use up some different stencils that I have in my stash. I think these would be really, really fun to do a whole set of 12 with even the same stencil, but just change the color palette and then give them as a set as a gift. I think that would be really cool. Do all 12, one for every month, and then give them as a set so the recipient can send them to their friends and family. I think that would be a really fun idea. Thanks so much for watching today. I will see you guys tomorrow for another Letter Tuesday. Thanks for watching.